If you get paid every 2 weeks, a monthly budget isn't gonna work. You need to create a plan for every paycheck that comes in with a bi-weekly budget. Now, the process isn't hard, but it's a little bit different than what you're used to. So let me show you how it works. Hi, I'm Jacob Wade from Lunch Money. I'm a financial coach, and today I want to walk you through step by step the process of creating a bi-weekly budget. Now, a bi-weekly budget allows you to budget each paycheck. It's also known as paycheck budgeting, but it's kind of like creating a couple of mini budgets within your month, just doing it 2 weeks at a time. Now, this is going to feel a little bit different, but stick with me. Once you go through this process, you might even find actually that you prefer this method of budgeting and throw out the monthly budget forever. And if you stay to the end of the video, I'm going to show you how Lunch Money is one of the only budgeting apps I've ever seen that will actually allow you to create a bi-weekly budget, and we automate the process. You're going to want to stick around for that. All right, let's get into it. All right, step number 1 is you're going to want to write down when you're getting paid and how much. And we're talking each paycheck. So for example, if you get paid on the 8th this month and then you get paid on the 22nd, and let's say you bring in $2,500 a paycheck, you're gonna want to write that number down. That's the baseline for creating your bi-weekly budget. And it doesn't matter if we're starting in the middle of the month, it's just how it works. All we're focused on is the next 2-week period. So write down, when am I gonna get paid and how much do I typically bring home? So once you have that number locked in for the next couple of weeks, now you're gonna want to write down all of your bills and when they're due. Now, this is gonna be really, really helpful because all we're doing is focusing on a 2-week window. And so we just wanna make sure we use the money you have gotten from your paycheck to pay just for those bills within that 2-week window. So if you get paid on the 8th, for example, you know that I need to make sure I write down all the bills between the 8th and the 22nd. Now, what I like to do is pull up a calendar and kind of look, okay, when do these bills go out? And as I list my bills down, I write down the date next to each bill. So when is this bill due? So it could be like internet, due on the 8th. It could be insurance, due on the 10th. It could be your cell phone, due on the 16th. Write down those little things so you can actually see in order when are these bills due. Now, of course, at Lunch Money, what's really, really cool is if you connect your financial accounts, we will pull all of that past spending data into a calendar. And in that calendar, it'll show you when those bills disappeared from your account. So you can quickly go, okay, this bill goes on this day, and it shows you the amounts. So you can quickly come up with this information. Now, for most people, the largest expenses are at the beginning of the month. So you might have noticed that at the start of the month, you feel super broke because your rent goes out. Maybe there's a car payment or insurance, things like that. And then when you get paid again later in the month, you're like, I'm flush with cash. This is why it's so important to know when those bills are due. And here's a little budgeting hack. Did you know you can actually change when your bills are due? Now, outside of like rent or maybe a car payment, which are typically due on the 1st of the month, almost every other bill, you can call up your provider and tell them, hey, I want to move this billing due date. So if you find that you have too many bills due at the beginning of the month and you're always overextended, move most of your bills toward the end of the month. That way, you can balance out the money that flows out of your account, and it makes things feel more reasonable. So you'll get paid next in the middle of the month and you'll have money set aside for the rest of those bills. All right, now that you've written down your bills and when they're due, you're now going to want to think about the variable expenses, daily expenses, things that you spend money on a daily basis. So this is stuff like groceries, gas, and restaurants, and household items, and shopping, and Amazon.com. Make sure you write all of those things down as well, but focus on how much do I typically spend over a 2-week period. So again, if you get paid on the 8th, how much am I going to spend on groceries? Maybe it's $600 for the month, but for the next 2 weeks, I'm going to try to stick to $300, right? You're breaking it down into kind of like a smaller incremental amount. Same thing with shopping or clothing. Maybe you're like, hey, I don't need clothing in the next couple of weeks, or I can pause on that Amazon purchase until I get paid next, right? It helps you start to think a little more detailed about when you make these purchases. But the idea is just to write down, what am I going to normally spend during this 2-week period on my variable expenses? And of course, Lunch Money will show you your past spending data. Again, on that calendar, you could just pull it up and go, okay, looks like I normally spend about this, and I usually shop at these places, during these 2 weeks. So the idea is just come up with a rough number, maybe pad that estimate 10 to 20% more than you normally spend just to be safe, but you want to make sure that you're allocating enough toward these expenses. All right, now the next step, a lot of people skip, but this one's really important. This is what blows up your budget. It's planning for infrequent expenses, things that come up, events that aren't happening every month, but those expenses will come up and they will blow things up if you don't plan for them. So this could be something like a wedding or Timmy's birthday party. Oh man, I forgot to get him a gift. Things like that. Or hey, we've got the family barbecue coming up. I got to make sure I bring some extra food. So whatever that is, just look at the next couple of weeks and go, am I going to spend on this thing over the next couple of weeks? Now, I think it's really important long-term. What you're going to want to do is think of these events that are coming up, especially bigger ones like travel or Christmas or vacation or weddings, things like that, and start saving small amounts per month toward those goals so that it doesn't surprise you and blow up your budget. But if you're not there yet, don't worry about it. Just look at the next couple of weeks and go, do I have something coming up I need to set aside money for? Okay, so now that you have all of this information, the next step is to kind of put it all together into a biweekly budget. So you're going to start with that income amount at the top. That's going to be $2,500 we talked about, and say you're getting paid on the 8th. Now we're going to talk about what are those expenses for the next 2 weeks. So write down those bills that are going out. Again, that could be like internet and subscription services and things that are recurring, and then make sure to allocate money toward those daily expenses, gas, groceries, restaurants, things like that. And then finally, hey, do I have any events coming up? So I'm going to put on the screen an example of what that could look like. So for example, let's say you get paid $2,500 on the 22nd of the month, but you're not going to get paid again until the 8th. So you need to make sure you have money for those big beginning of the month expenses like your rent and car payments, things like that. So in this example budget, you have $2,500 to start with, but let's say you also have $1,000 in your checking account. So you have about $3,500 total to make it until the next 2 weeks. You got about $2,000 worth of bills going through, right? Rent and those other large expenses. And you got about $900 of daily recurring expenses that are also going to go out. So adding those together, that'll leave you with about $500 left over. That's going to roll into the next pay period. And then that leads us to our final step, right? You've allocated your money. You're like, okay, I've got some money in my checking account. I'm getting paid, but I've got all these big bills at the beginning of the month. And then I've got about $500 left over. That's going to roll to your next pay period. So you're going to do this again. So you're going to go, okay, now I've got about $500. I'm going to get paid on the 8th, another $2,500. Between the 8th and the next time I get paid, what are my bills? What are my expenses? How much am I going to have? As you can see here, the goal is to, let's make sure we don't go into debt. Let's not blow that extra $500 on stuff. Let's make sure we use that and roll it into the next pay period. The goal would ultimately be to get to a point when the beginning of the month starts, you already have all the money set aside. You want to get a month ahead of your dollars. Now, the way to do that, of course, is, roll over money every couple of weeks and see if you can start getting that number bigger and bigger to the point where you have a month of expenses set aside. And now you can just start monthly budgeting again. So the way to do that would be, as you roll over funds between pay periods, you just want that number to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And ultimately, you'll have a month of expenses already set aside right when the month starts. And then it doesn't matter when things are due, and it just brings a lot of stress off your shoulders. But focusing on this biweekly paycheck is the only way to get there if you get paid every 2 weeks. Now, at the beginning of the video, I told you that lunch money makes this easy. I want to show you something really cool. So lunch money allows you to create a simple budget. And the one cool thing that I haven't seen really anywhere else is if you go to the budget settings section here, let me get out of the way, you can actually create a custom period, right? So you have the default view of a month at a time. But if you go in here and hit the drop down, you can create a custom period. And not only can you do it, by month, you can actually set it by days, weeks, or even an annual budget, doing it by years. But really easy to create a bi-weekly budget. You just say, all right, I want a new budget every 2 weeks. You can tell it when you want to start, and you can base it on, your budgeted income, the actual income that comes in, or it'll choose between the two. So you can set a budgeted amount, but maybe you get paid more, you get extra tips. Sweet. It'll actually bump up to that actual income amount. And then you can set when does the rollover happen, when does that start, and then set a bi-weekly budget. So as you can see here, I created a bi-weekly budget, and you can look at the first 2 weeks of December last year. Now, there was a lot of spending happening here. This is Christmas time, and I brought some money in that I had saved and set aside for that. But I just want to show you how this works. So let's say I've got $7,500 coming in for this 2 week period starting on the 1st. And then I can go through and set my budgeted amounts. And all I'm focused on here is the next 2 weeks. That's all I'm focused on. So, and I had some business account stuff here, but see, I've got Christmas shopping, did a ton of that. I've got different food sections. and then I can go through and look at subscriptions, stuff like that. The way that I found this information, like I was saying earlier, is we have a calendar view. So if I go to the home screen here, and I can click over on calendar, what's really cool is right now it's showing me all of December. It's showing me all the transactions that happen on each day. But what I want to do is go over here, click on this button, and now you can look at the 2-week period. So now we're just looking at that period we were just talking about, December 1st to the 14th, just the first couple of weeks. So let's say I had a paycheck come in, and I had a couple of different things. So paychecks come in, and then I've got my different expenses that go out. This might feel a little overwhelming, so you can group things by category, make them look a little bit smaller. But now I can quickly go through and go, okay, I have this pet expense, Chewy.com. I think we have that on order. I know that's going to come out on the 1st of the month. And then we spend a bit on groceries. Obviously, we did a bunch of Christmas shopping as well. But look, I've got a subscription service. So it looks like Spotify is coming out on the 4th of the month. So now I can kind of see, okay, these things are going to happen in the next 2 weeks. So the next time I'm planning for a 2-week pay period, I can look at this data and go, all right, I spent about this much. So this data will inform how I'm going to create the next budget. The cool thing is this is in the past. I didn't plan this stuff. I just connected my accounts and Lunch Money brought it in automatically for me. And then as I go through, I can go, okay, I spend, groceries, it looks like we're going weekly on Tuesdays. I mean, look at that. Now I'm starting to see patterns just looking at this calendar view. So once I have this calendar view, I can now go back over to my finances section and start creating my budgeted amounts. So the cool thing is you can look at the calendar. We're going to pull all of your transactions automatically. And as you start to plan future pay periods, you can quickly know, okay, I typically have these types of expenses, these types of, this amount of spending per 2-week pay period, and I'm just going to allocate for each. And then as you start to make those plans, you can know how much you're going to have left over, right? So for this pay period, it looks like I've got some money, and what I would do is I would actually just send the rest of that to my savings fund. So I've already budgeted everything, the activity already happened, cool. The left to budget amount is this. Boom. So now I'm going to send the rest of that money to my savings. So at the end of this period, I'm either going to roll it over or I'm going to put it into my emergency fund. So you can see how powerful it is to sync your accounts, check out that calendar, and start planning at just your paycheck intervals to know, do I have the money to get to that next? So if you get paid every 2 weeks, it might make more sense to create a budget that aligns with your pay periods. Now, Lunch Money makes that easy. We will automatically sync your accounts, bring your transactions in, show all of your information in that calendar view, and you can actually set your budget period to align exactly when you get paid. Now, it's going to roll over your money each month. You're going to track everything by paycheck only, so you have total control of your money. Budgeting each paycheck is powerful, and Lunch Money is one of the only apps that I've ever seen that will help you do that seamlessly. And it'll help you control your money and save more at the same time, lowering your money stress. And speaking of saving money, if you want to learn how to save money fast, check out this video right here where I show the money hacks that can help you save $10,000 this year.